We've seen 2 seasons of Daredevil, we've seen Jessica Jones, and even though they're, in the same neighborhood and in the same, obviously, Marvel world and same grounded part of that Marvel world, they're different shows. And everything we've seen of Luke Cage is also a very different show. For you, as someone who obviously has been closely involved with all of this, what's unique and special about Luke Cage for you that you're excited for this audience to see?
Well, I think very much as not just the head of Marvel Television, but also as one of the executive producers of all of the shows, it really is our responsibility, not just to Netflix, but to the audience, to be able to see how rich the Marvel characters are. And in the same kind of way that, Marvel Zombies, who we absolutely adore, have known for years that if you pick up a Daredevil comic and you pick up a copy of Alias, for those of you that don't know, that's the Jessica Jones series, or if you pick up Luke Cage, each of those comics feel different. They have different casts, they have different worlds, they have different artists, and so it really is incumbent on us to make sure that each show has a different feeling to it. And when we brought in Cheo Coker, who is the showrunner of that show, one of the things that we talked about was what makes Luke different. Now, there's some obvious differences in the sense that, we're talking about really the first African-American superhero that comes from the street and lives in that world. And so, when we started just there, we just said, okay, so what is that physically going to look like? And, one of the things that we haven't done and you don't get to see enough of is, I've said from the very beginning that there really are 5 defenders. There's Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and the 5th defender is New York City. New York City has always been a character in all of our shows. You can see it wherever we go, where we shoot. Yep. We're up on the top of buildings. We're down in the subway system. We're out on the wharf. We're in the middle of Central Park. Like, we just go all over the place. And so we really looked hard into the practicality of shooting up in Harlem, and they were incredibly, the people of New York, the mayor of New York, the governor of New York, like everybody works towards making that stuff happen. And so, places like the Apollo, places that are so rich in terms of culture, in terms of the ethnic quality, in terms of, and what Cheo and I always refer to, sort of the musicality of that area is what set the tone. And then, you can't set out to do Luke Cage and not deal with the reality of what's going on in this country and what's going on in general. Where it's not what the show's about, but if you walk away from it with a different viewpoint in terms of whether it's racism or whether it's what's going on with blacks, what's going on with every diverse people that are here, and if we can get our message out, which is this is all one planet, and we're gonna have to figure it out. Like, you just can't put up walls and just sort of try to figure it out that way, and so, we made a show which has great fun, great action, all the things that you want out of Luke Cage. He's a total badass. Mike Coulter just plays the role. It's a very different Luke Cage than you saw on Jessica Jones, even though it's the same actor. On Jessica Jones, you were seeing Luke through Jessica's POV because it was Jessica's story, and that's the way it should be. And so there weren't scenes where Luke was just doing stuff on his own. Now you're going to get to see him, with his friends, with his world, with what's going on. And let's just start with the fact that Hello Misty Knight, like Detective Misty Knight, is in that show, and Simone Missick is just killing it. And it's just all I can tell you is that if you've enjoyed what we've done so far, for us, it's always going to be make it real, make it grounded, and just tell the truth. And if you can do those things, and oh yeah, by the way, he's bulletproof. Oh yeah, he can lift up a car. It's just much easier to make that stuff work. Exactly, you could do that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting what you said about sort of the current relevance in today's world, because for a character that was created 44 years ago, the climate that character was created in, and one of our columnists wrote a column a couple years ago, Joe Illidge, about how the superpower for Luke Cage was that he was bulletproof, and it was after the assassination of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, like that's why that was his power. That was the power fantasy, and like you look at today, and like it's unfortunate that like that character still has that same type of resonance.
No, I mean Marvel always works best when it lives in the real world, but then has the sort of Marvel touch around it, so that there are people with superpowers. There is that little magic icing of humor. The people are aware of how unusual this is. It's one of the things that's very different about Marvel is that if someone is suddenly bulletproof or able to lift a car or tear off a car door, like, there are people there that are going, how did that happen? As opposed to, oh, I guess it's just yet another person with superpowers.
Yeah.
And so by making it real and grounded and feel like it is of our world, then if we happen to be able to get a message in along the way, great. But if you just want to watch the show and enjoy the show, enjoy the show. And the best part about being on Netflix is that it really is a 13-hour story. And so we very much approach it the same kind of way from comic book fans as you would a graphic novel. A graphic novel can be read in chapters, it can be read in individual. When you pick up the trade of something, those individual issues are put together, maybe you read it that way. But it is always interesting when you get to read it all as one thing. And that's why what Netflix offers you is that, on September 30th, boom, all 13 episodes are there. You get to watch it all out. And as I say every time we do this, I apologize to the employers everywhere that, most of the people that work for you happen to get sick on that day. I don't know how it happens that way.
Well, I do want to touch on, obviously, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because we can't ignore what that show has done. And then going into season 4, obviously that's the major achievement. And, each season has sort of had, it has had like a very kind of distinct arc, a distinct theme. Obviously, last season we saw the Secret Warriors coming together. I know it's early, but is there anything you can say sort of about, the mindset going into season 4? Now that this world has been built and expanded and twisted around so many times.
I think the fun of it is, the part of the reason why people ask me all the time, what's my favorite show of all the shows that we do, and I really do have a very special place for S.H.I.E.L.D. Without S.H.I.E.L.D., nothing else happens. And we had to prove to the world that Marvel Television could make a television series and that we could compete in this incredibly competitive atmosphere. And so, yes, we have an incredible gift that Clark Gregg, came from the features and reprised his role as Phil Coulson. But all those brand new characters, all those people that Jed Whedon and Marissa Tancheron and Jeff Bell work with every single time. The fans out there who've so embraced our entire cast, all that makes a huge difference. You got a little tease at the end of last season that clearly something's happened to Daisy. She seems to be on her own. That dang media has decided to name her Quake, and so we have to find out if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And clearly S.H.I.E.L.D. is now hunting her. We're seeing that Coulson and Mac are now partners for some reason. They refer to each other as though they are equals. They refer to Phil Coulson as Agent Coulson. They refer to the new director. So there's obviously going to be a lot more changes. The biggest change, of course, is that we're going to 10 o'clock. And then by going to 10 o'clock, we're going to be taking on just a little bit more edge, a little bit more grit, and I think it isn't just going to be the show's pretty violent for something at 9 o'clock.
I was gonna say,
but when we get to 10 o'clock, we're going to be just a little hair of something that I think people are going to really enjoy.